Hey everybody, hope you're having a good day. Thank you for taking time to join us this morning. We appreciate it. Hopefully you get something out of this presentation today. We're talking parts and inventory. So we've got three main objectives today. I want to define what exactly parts and inventory are in NexGen, and more importantly, or just as important, what it is not. I want to cover some of the benefits that you get out of having an active inventory in NexGen. And I want to discuss some of the steps that are involved in getting set up. So I know that getting an active inventory in the system is usually one of the last steps that our customers get to, or last phases of their implementation. A lot of reasons for that, obviously, tackling that project, going and getting the shop in order, doing all the physical counts is quite a challenge. So we understand that, but there's certainly a lot of benefit to be gained if you do take on that task. And we're here to help with that. And just going to kind of go through the basics of setting up those parts in NexGen and covering some of the common questions we have when our customers do take on the setting up of inventory in our system, hopefully clear up some things around pricing, around cost, around some of our GL accounts. So whether you're new to inventory, you've never looked at it before, or whether you've kind of taken some early steps into getting started, or whether you've used it for years and may just be looking to pick up a few pointers, hopefully it's valuable for all those different scenarios. All right, so what is NexGen inventory tracking? The functionality was designed as an off-balance sheet inventory ledger, meaning that individual inventory transactions are not sent over to your accounting system. For example, if you add a part to a work order, there isn't a separate adjustment to your cost of goods sold and inventory automatically created through our system. So it's intended to be kind of a ledger outside of your balance sheet. Now, I realize a lot of you have inventory on your balance sheet, and we do have some reporting that can help with that. But in its simplest form, the intention was for you to do all of your parts tracking within our system, which ties in nicely to maintenance, to resale if you're selling parts, purchasing, and those types of things. So as I mentioned, it tracks inventory through purchasing, resale, customer work orders. So if you're doing maintenance for one of your customers and you include parts on those repairs or PMs, and also your in-house maintenance, so your in-house work orders. Now you can also add parts in our system and not track the quantities. There's some benefits to doing that, just for reference, to pull up previous pricing, just to keep the information about those parts. And I'll touch on that a little bit more when we hop into NexGen in just a bit here. We've got stock on hand reporting at a company yard and specific location levels. So it does accommodate if you've got multiple companies, multiple legal entities, and multiple yards. So you can track those at those different locations. And as I mentioned, there is some balance sheet reconciliation reporting through that stock on hand report that will allow you to adjust your balance sheet on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, whatever your cadence is there. So we will touch on the accounting side of things a little bit today, but everybody's unique in terms of how they do their accounting when it comes to inventory. And the size of your shop or the number of yards you have definitely plays a role in that as well. So as a general disclaimer or general comment, if you're interested in looking at getting inventory up and running, I highly recommend that you reach out to your CSM, and we can have a more specific conversation around your company and your needs there. So some of the benefits of inventory tracking. The first one and the obvious one is the cost savings. It allows you to purchase the right amount of parts at the right time by tracking through our reorder capabilities. Gives you good visibility into how often or how frequently parts are being used, at what prices. It forces you to organize your shop, and this is really the painful part and probably one of the reasons it takes so long to get this functionality in place. Going out to the shop and looking at the part room can be a little daunting, but like I said before, I assure you if you go through that process, you'll definitely save time and money, and just have a more organized shop in general. The operational efficiency, like I mentioned, we've got some streamlining of reordering parts in our system. I'm going to show you that today when we hop into NexGen. The fourth one there, avoid maintenance delays, whether it's for your customers or whether it's internal. If you've got a critical repair and you don't have the part on hand because you're not organized in that area, this can help with that. Obviously, if it's your equipment and you can't get out to a job because of that, that costs you money. That's something we all want to avoid there. And then the historical reporting and tracking, both from a usage and a pricing perspective, seeing the history of each part, what you've historically spent on those parts, and how often you're using the various parts in your inventory. Okay, so what's next? How do we get this rolling? Some of the steps that are involved, identifying all your parts, and then deciding which ones you want to track in terms of the quantities in NexGen. Like I said, you can put them all in the system, and we recommend that. But that's the first step in getting this thing rolling. Getting organized, identifying your locations, bins, and basically organizing your shop as to how you want to house those parts and lay those out in the most kind of user-friendly way. The counting of the parts, we've got an inventory count sheet that I'm going to show you that can help with that, whether you've got parts in the system and you want to clean them up in terms of the number on hand, or you're just getting started. You can use it for both purposes, or just from a general audit or reconciliation process as well. The next step would be entering those parts and counts in NexGen, and then entering the average cost of those parts as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Before I jump into NexGen, entering a long list of parts manually probably doesn't sound very appealing. So we can help with that. We do have imports that can put your parts into the system and put all the information I'm going to walk through today manually in NexGen through an automated process. So we're here to help with that. Like I said, reach out to your CSM and we can get a game plan and figure out what's the best way forward for each of our customers there. All right, with that said, I'm going to jump over to NexGen now. Okay, so first we're going to go to maintain, parts, and parts. So like I said, I'm going to walk through the manual setup of a new part and kind of show you how that's done, and also kind of explain some of the key fields, what they mean, what they represent, hopefully clear up some confusion around some of the pricing and costing fields that we have in the maintain part screen, and go through adjusting our stock on hand and our average cost, do some purchasing, show quickly what the invoicing side to our customers would look like if you do sell parts, look at some of the reports, and please feel free to use the question capability or function, and Taylor's going to keep an eye on those, and we'll address those as we can here. Okay, so the first step, we're going to put in our part number. Now you can use your own part numbers. We recommend that you stick with the manufacturer part number here, just for simplicity. It can get a little complicated, and I think it's a little easier for reference. Put in a basic description of what that part is. You can identify the manufacturer. If the manufacturer is not in the system, you can always hit the new button here. So this is a database table, so you'll have to identify all those manufacturers there and the under maintain parts and parts manufacturers. Kind of like setting up a customer in a job. Any general comments here that apply to that part? Select a unit of measure. We've got part types. So this is just a way to group like parts together. So we've got air filter as a part type here. The last two fields, previous part number. If this part either replaces a previous part or becomes obsoleted by a part, you can reference those parts here. I have a cross-functional relationship just for reference to see the old part and the new part. You don't have to use those. And then if you do any pricing by weight, you can check that box here. All right, I'm going to go over to my company tab. It's going to ask me, do I want to add this part to all of your companies? If you have multiple legal entities, it can be a shortcut, but we recommend just hitting no here and making sure that you're only adding the parts to the applicable companies. So I've got JJ Kern as my company. I'm going to put in my vendor. In this case, it's going to be Napa. Now you can have a separate vendor part. Oftentimes they refer to it as something different than the manufacturer. So I'll just put B dash. For the vendor part there, this will show, if you actually print out your purchase orders, the vendor part number will show up on the purchase order for their reference, so they're clear as to what you're ordering. Barcode. Just put in a barcode number here. So the barcode functionality works on the Atom application, our mobile device. It can be used once a part is set up and a barcode is assigned. You can use the barcode scanning, which is in-app functionality, to add a part to a purchase order or to a work order. You do have to add the barcode manually the first time, whether it's through an import or whether it's through this screen here. But once it's in the system, it can save you some time if you're doing a work order in the shop or you're doing some purchasing by just scanning that barcode, and it'll automatically pull the information into your purchase order or your work order. The next field, grouping, this isn't something you have to use, but I like to look at it from kind of a hierarchy perspective. So we have the part type on the main screen there, which we selected as air filter. Think of grouping as kind of the next level up of that hierarchy, a way to kind of organize your parts that way. It's not really used for reporting, but it can be just a useful reference here, or a way for people that may not be familiar with the parts to get a better understanding of what type of part it is, or what group of part it belongs to. Status we're going to keep as active, obviously. Discountable and taxable. These are checked by default. This just means that it allows you to put a discount on your purchase price, and it allows you to apply tax if applicable. Doesn't mean it's going to always tax it. Similar to like a billing code on the revenue side for jobs, you still have to apply a sales tax code for tax to be populated, but this just makes it eligible. The next checkbox here is really important, the track quantity. So if you decide that you want to keep an active count of this particular part, you want to leave that box checked. If you don't want to keep an active count, if it's something like fluids where you're not going to be measuring each time you use a gallon, you can uncheck that. You can, like I said before, we recommend that you add those non-trackable parts as well, just for reference. So when you do put it onto a purchase order or work order, it pulls in all the applicable information, like your last purchase price and things like that. So for this example, we're going to keep it as track quantity. We've got the serialized and the track warranty as well. Serialized is just for some of your more expensive parts, like your motors, your pumps. So if you want to actually serialize each individual part that you have internally, you can do that. And also, when you check that, it allows you to track the warranty, which is helpful. So you can see if there's any potential warranty opportunities on some of those more expensive parts. All right, now getting into the pricing here. Retail price. This is used when you invoice or when you sell parts to your customers. So I'll put in a value of 75 here. And I'll come back. It also can be used from a cost perspective. I'm going to kind of show you the different ways that works in just a minute. Standard cost. The short answer here is this really doesn't do anything. This is strictly for reference. There is a lot of confusion between the average cost and the standard cost. If this is something that you're having trouble with, or it's causing issues with your company, you can always hide this field. It doesn't go anywhere, like I said. So I'm just going to put in 50 here for illustration purposes. You'll see that the average cost is grayed out. This is not something that can be edited in the maintain parts screen. This is the average, or I'm sorry, this is the method we use within our system to apply costs for inventory. So when you look at our reports, our stock on hand reports, it is using average cost, weighted average cost. It is a weighted average. So if you purchase 10 units at $50, then you purchase 20 units at $40, it's going to lean closer to 40 because it does factor in the quantity as well. That obviously starts off at 0. We don't have any activity against this part yet. I'm going to set that up in just a minute here to show you how that works. And then when you start purchasing, that average cost will be adjusted, or when you do the manual adjustments as well. Our on order and on hand is 0. So we just added it here. Minimum and maximum. So these are for reorder points, and I highly recommend that you take advantage of these. You may want to start with smaller numbers here to see how quickly parts are moving and how often you're using them. For this example, I'm just going to put a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 25. So what that means is anytime that my on-hand quantity is below 10, it's going to flag that for a reorder. And then we've got some screens where you can expedite that and create POs automatically. I'll show you that later on here. And then once, or in the case that you're below the minimum, it's going to, the default will be to get you to the maximum. So if I've got a quantity of 8 and my minimum's 10, it's going to default for me to purchase 17 to get up to that 25 maximum there. Purchase discount. Purchase discount is a percentage that's applied off of the retail price when you're purchasing. So when you create a purchase order, the hierarchy of the population of the cost, so to speak, it's always going to look at your last purchase price first. So if I had purchased something at $50 and I created a PO, and that was my last purchase price, that would be the cost that defaults into that line in the PO. If there's no last purchase price, it goes to the average cost. In this case, that's also 0 because we haven't set that yet. But in the scenario that you put in a percentage discount, that percentage discount is going to look at the retail price. So it's essentially looking at it as the list price in this scenario, and it's going to take that percentage off of the $75. And that will override both the last purchase price and the average cost. So I'm going to continue to set this up, and I'll illustrate that in a PO momentarily here. All right, so we've got pretty much everything there. I did want to touch on the GL accounts. Now, this is another area where there's been some confusion. So like I mentioned in the opening, the system is not out of the box designed or doesn't automatically send over cost of goods sold and inventory adjustments. So essentially, the COGS and the inventory accounts here, unless you're one of our customers that has a unique situation and their accounting package facilitates it, these don't do anything. The only GL account here that will do anything is sales, and this is when you sell parts. This will be the revenue account that's used along with our AR account on the invoices. And I'll show you when we look at the stock on hand report, how you can do an adjusting journal entry. But again, the system is not designed to send over individual inventory transactions to adjust inventory and cost of goods sold or your expense accounts. Like I said before, when you put it on a work order or when you use it internally. All right, save here. Now I'm going to go into, I'm going to finish going through these tabs and we'll come back and look at some of the pricing there. Price points. This is informational only. These price points were designed to represent different quantities and price levels for your customers if you're reselling parts. They don't automatically populate on a parts invoice or on an order entry. This is for reference only, so you can use these if you want to come back and assign discount pricing if applicable. It works a little bit differently than our price list. The price list, this is where you're actually going to set a specific price for customers. So if I do like a tier 1 pricing here, and when I put in these quantities and these price points, and this price list is selected for one of my customers, which you'd apply at the customer level, just like a job, then this price will flow through to your customer-facing invoices. Yard location, this allows to assign multiple yards and or locations. I'm going to come back to this one once we add our new stock. I'm going to talk through some logic around setting up locations in the bins. And we're going to hold off on the alternate vendor and units for just a minute. So at this point, I've saved my part and I want to go in and put in some starting inventory. So I've gone and counted. I've got a certain number of these, and I'm going to put that in through our enter, inventory stock adjustments and transfers, and inventory stock adjustments. All right. So I know this one's currently not assigned yet to a yard. Filter here. Bear with me here. It's hiding on me. There it is. So I've got my part number here, BOSO 22514. Current stock is 0. New stock, I'm going to start with 10. And I can put in a comment. I'm just going to put starting inventory. I'm going to save. And when I come back, you can see now I've got an on-hand quantity of 10. My average cost is still 0 because I haven't applied that yet. I haven't done any purchasing. But to get started, you can also apply an average cost, which I'm going to do right now. So that's under enter, inventory stock adjustments, inventory cost adjustment. So I'm going to put in my part number here. Put in my new average cost. I'll just put starting average cost. Tells me it's been updated successfully. Close out of this. Refresh my part here. Now you can see I've got an average cost of $45 for those 10 parts. Again, the standard cost is just for reference, doesn't do anything, doesn't go anywhere. And my retail price of $75. And just to illustrate what that looks like on a purchase order, come here, just select my vendor. Enter my part number here. Oh, I'm going to actually, before I do that, I do want to go back here to the yard location. Now that I've got my average cost and my stock in here, I do want to assign my location before I jump over there. Yes, so I'm saying it's part of the Detroit yard. Locations, these can be physical locations. I recommend that you use kind of the simplest method or approach possible here. So in this case, I'm just going to put it in the shop. Yes. Now the bin, this is a more specific location within the shop. We recommend using kind of what we call the row, column, shelf approach. So if you think of it as a grocery store, you can start with the row that it's in. So if it's in row 3, go from left to right. And then the second indicator, we usually like to use the column within the row, which is alpha. So I'll put A, and the last one, how many shelves down is it from the top? So 3. Oops. Now you don't have to use this approach. You don't have to use the bin. This is a free text field. It's not a database field like your location or your part types. But this just will help with your inventory count sheet and just keeping you more organized and helping the guys find the parts a little easier. All right, so I'm going to save that. Delete that part. Okay, so add part. Okay, So now you can see all the information for that part pulls in. I've got my retail price. The cost is pulling from, because we don't have a last purchase price, there's no activity, it's going to use the average cost. You can see that the GL account, this actually pulls in from the Napa vendor. So we've got a sales, COGS, and inventory. I told you the COGS and inventory don't do anything or don't go anywhere. This GL account represents the debit side of your purchase, whether that's inventory, you put it directly to inventory account, or you put it to expense. And kind of a shortcut there under maintain vendors. If it's going to the same place every time, you can see here for Napa, I put in that GL account. It just happens to be the same as the sales. So this will automatically populate on all your purchases for Napa. That is a default. You can change it, but just wanted to point that out. So we've got our average cost in here. Now, if I delete this and I put in a percentage discount, so let's say 10%, let's save that. And then I add that same part. Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. Over here and add the part. Put in the right part number. Okay, you can see that the cost is now $67.50 because that's taking a 10% discount off of our $75 retail price. So I know that can be a little tricky, understanding that hierarchy. Just remember that if you do put in a purchase discount, it will use the retail price. It will override average cost and last purchased. If you have nothing here, keep this at 0. It's going to look first to your last purchase price and then to your average cost. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to change this cost here just to show something. So let's say that this actually came in at 55. So you can always adjust your cost there as well. We're going to purchase 10 more. You can always see in your POs and your work orders your quantity, your current quantity on hand. You can also select where you want that to go. Right now we've only got the 1 yard location and bin. You can add multiple. So make sure that's correct. We've got the new and used. When you're adding parts or when you're buying parts, make sure you clarify whether it is a new or used part. And then as always, if it applies to a work order or a job, you can tie those numbers in here. So I'm going to save that. Got my PO number. Now, if I go back to my part, you'll see the quantity is still on hand is still 10, but you can see that I got 10 on order. So it until I receive it, it's not actually going to be on hand. So I'll go ahead and for my purchase order, create the receiver. Automatically pulls in my PO there. Date received, who received it. You got a packing slip number. Go ahead and save. So now that I've got my receiver number, you can see I've got a quantity of 20 on hand. On order is 0. And because I had a purchase price of 55, the weighted average cost is now 50, same as my standard because I had 45 at 10 and 55 at 10. So now the average cost is 50. One other thing I wanted to show, so oftentimes the price will vary from the purchase order to the invoice. So if I had a PO for 55, but the invoice came in at a different amount, that's okay. So I'm going to voucher this, go to my detail. I'm going to change my cost from 55 to, let's say it came in at 60. I got to put a vendor invoice number in here. Take out the tax. Okay, so now I've received it and vouchered it. If I go back to my part, You can see the last purchase price is now 60, and you can see that the average cost was updated from 50 to 52.50. So it will replace the receiver record with the voucher record if they differ. All right. And I did want to point out one report that's useful here just to kind of illustrate all the different steps I just went through. Under materials and history for one part, this will show everything that occurred that we just went through. So I had the beginning inventory of 0. I put in my inventory adjustment with my comment there to put in the original 10. And then when I put in my average cost, it takes the 10 out at 0 and re-adds the 10 at 45, my original weighted average cost there. And then you can see from the PO receiver that I created, I've got a 10. It overrode the 55 with the 60 from the voucher. And so this is kind of a history at a part level that you can look at. It's a useful report to kind of get your bearings or help reconcile if something doesn't look right. All right, I did mention earlier I go back to my parts here, I had my reorder points. So right now I've got a quantity of 20, which is under my, or I'm sorry, over my minimum. So if I change this to, let's change this to 21. That state. And if I go to enter Rex POs from parts reorder points, and I hit view, I'm gonna look at my locations here. All right, you can see that here's the part we just created. I've got an on-hand quantity of 20. The minimum, which we're under right now by 1, is 21. And the maximum was 25. So it's always going to put the quantity to order to equal your maximum. So the minimum triggers it, and the maximum is what defines how many you order. And then you can use this, hit OK, generate PO. It's going to go straight to a PO because I don't require recs for my purchase orders in the system. But if you require a rec for all your POs, it will take you to a PO rec as opposed to a PO. And my purchase order is generated. So now I've got on hand 20 and then 5 on order. All right, going back to our last couple tabs here, alternate vendor. I wanted to clarify a few things on this one. So what this does, it allows you to put in additional vendors. So I've got NAP as my primary. I'll just select a random one here. I'll do O'Reilly's. O'Reilly Auto Parts. Now, if they've got a different part number, maybe a separate barcode. Now, you can put in a cost and a purchase discount. Might be more expensive at O'Reilly's. That's why they're not our primary. One thing to note, this cost, if you do select this part or this vendor, it will not travel through. It will still use the same hierarchy we went through before. So in this case, it'll populate the 60, which is our last purchase price. So this 65 here is just for reference. But what you can do is, if I go into a purchase order, I do new, and I put in a vendor here. And I'll add part. If I put in my alternative part number here, you'll see that, oops, what did I do there? It'll help if I save this. Let's try that again. You'll see that it converts it to the primary part number. Because this is not an official part in the system, it's just linked to this primary part. It will convert it, and it will account for any purchases made against that part as the primary part number. So we recommend that you never use parts here that exist as a primary part. These are only for alternative parts. The system gets a little bit confused if you've got them set up as a alternative part and as a primary part there. Taylor, I'm going to pause there. I think you've got a couple questions that may have come in.
Yeah, so a couple good ones. I didn't want to interrupt you there, but so the first one that we had come in, I'll make this one live here. What type of scanner do you need, or what's compatible, and do we have any recommendations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So David actually helped me out with this one. Any commercial off-the-shelf scanner should work. We've got one, the Netum CCD barcode scanner. It's $35 on Amazon. But the general takeaway here is any off-the-shelf one will work. David Thornton is our in-house scanner expert. So if you follow up with me directly, I can get you some more information. But the scanning capabilities do exist in-app if you're using Atom. So you can use the functionality built in within the software. If you want to get your own barcode scanner for various reasons, don't have to go crazy. Most of the basic ones will work.
Another question that came up as well. So I believe that when it was explained, the inventory and stock adjustments, the scenario we went through referred to almost a new inventory count.
Yeah.
A question that came through was, can they make those adjustments on the fly later on if they're just trying to make some small tweaks?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of our customers have parts from 10 years ago that the quantities are nowhere near accurate. So it's a pretty common scenario. So right now, let's pretend this part's been around for a while. I've got 20 on hand. I do my physical inventory and realize that I've only got 15. Yeah, so at any time I can come back to the enter inventory stock adjustments, find my part here. Where'd it go? Oh, change my yard here to Detroit. And to the shop. Yeah, so I can always come here, new quantities 15. Oops, not 1500. Put a comment. And save. If I go back to my part, you can see the new on hand is 15. It does not impact your average cost, that stays the same. But yeah, we highly encourage, keeping up on those and doing periodic audits of your inventory. And kind of a segue into that, I was going to show this, but this is a good time to display it. A really helpful report, inventory count sheet. I can do it for specific locations. I'll just do the shop in Detroit. So once you have your parts in the system, you can use this as your initial starting point, or you can use this for audit purposes. And this is where those bins are really helpful, because it can kind of control the order of how this is set up. You can do it by bin. But anyway, you can print this out, you can walk around the shop, and you can go part by part, put your quantity on hand, indicate the number of new and used, and then kind of do a check that way, go back into the system and make your adjustments that way. So yeah, you can adjust the inventory counts and the average cost at any time. Anything else, Taylor, that's relevant right now?
Yeah, I had one more, maybe a good clarification question. I know that we went through that the inventory will adjust at the kind of once the part is received, but perhaps going through what if it's directly vouchered and then at the work order level as well may be helpful as well.
Sure. Yep. All right, we'll start with the work orders. So real quick, as soon as you put a part on a work order, that will decrease it from your inventory. So I'll add my AT09 here. I'll put in so I can see my quantity on hand is 15, and I'll go ahead. I don't know if I've got everything I need for this, but I'll save it. Got my work order. So you can see it reduced by 1 to 14. So as soon as that's put on a work order, that is removed from inventory. And then the second part of that for vouchering, if you don't do a PO and you go straight to a voucher, that will deduct it at the time that you create the voucher. So no receiver necessary there. The receivers only is kind of the first step if you are using receivers, but anytime you bypass that and go straight to a voucher, it'll immediately impact your inventory counts. Good question.
And then we actually just had one more come in referring to kind of just inventory adjustments. Do we offer any solutions in terms of uploading or using an Excel file of some kind to be able to update those quantities?
Yeah, we've got some in-app import features for the setup of the parts. We don't have anything for the counts, but we have helped customers with SQL scripts. So get with your CSM. I've recently gone through that with a couple of our customers where, especially if you've got just a bunch of junk data, it'll take you forever. We can help you with those imports for both the cost and the stock adjustments.
Okay. Well, I think we're all caught up now.
All right. Thanks, Taylor. All right. Let's see, where did I leave off here? Go back to the parts. I did want to finish on those tabs. So we talked about the alternative vendor. I did want to mention the last couple tabs here. Now, in my system, the minimum and maximum are part of the company tab. If you're looking at your multiple yard company, you may have an additional tab called yard. It's different from the yard location. It would be to the right of the units. Essentially, the only purpose of that tab is to allow you to have different min-max reorder points by yard. Again, this is not turned on in this system. If it's something that you don't have and you would like to have, we can certainly turn that on for you. It's a quick database flag. But if you're a one-yard company, it might make sense just to keep it on the company tab. But I did want to point that out in case there was any confusion around that. The last tab here is units. This allows you to add parts to a unit in terms of suggested parts for things like preventative maintenance. It doesn't take it out of inventory. It's just kind of a reference on both the unit side and the part side. So I'm going to add a unit here. I'm going to put it to AT11. You can also associate it with an activity. This is really helpful if you've got a PM as a reference. So this will be part of my my lower here, 300-hour lower, and I'll save that. And then if I go to my unit, maintain unit screen, just to kind of show the relationship there. These two tables, or these two, I think it's the same table actually, but whether you're looking at the unit or you're looking at the part, if I add a unit to a part or a part to a unit, I have a parts tab on my unit screen, it will talk to the other screen. So I'll try to find my part here. I put it on 11, right? Where is it at? There it is. All right, so you can see when I added it here on the part screen that on the AT11 maintain unit screen, it shows that same part. And vice versa, if I added it on the unit, it would reflect here. So if I go to like the AT09 and I add a part, I put in Save it. And go back to my part and refresh it. You'll see that the AT09 is listed as well. I can apply an activity. In terms of how these are used, it's mostly used for reference. There are a couple areas where these will flow. If you do create work order quotes, the parts will flow in for that unit. So I put the AT11 on a work order quote. I will get my my air filter applied to that. Also on PMs in Atom, if you're doing work orders and you have an activity that is designated as a preventative maintenance activity, you will get a suggested list of parts that you can use within the activity itself. And then it allows you to go one by one and decide which parts you want to apply to that work order. So it saves you some time. If you are using the tablet and you are in the shop, you don't have to go and look up units or ask which parts belong to which units. You can have some shortcuts there, so that can save you a few steps. All right, so that's pretty much it for the part setup. Like I said, we can help get every element of this imported and kind of talk through some logic there, what works best for you guys. I did want to show the stock on hand report. So under inventory, stock on hand, we'll do shop. So what this report does, like I mentioned in the intro, this is what you can use to reconcile with your balance sheet if you are tracking inventory on your balance sheet. So you can do it as a current view, or I can go back and look, if I want to look at month end for September. So as of 9/30, it shows me all my inventory parts. This will not include parts that are not being tracked. So if you don't have the track quantity box checked, it will not appear on this report or the inventory count sheet. So I'll just go to my last screen here. So I got a total of $77K for my Detroit shop location. The cost is using the average cost. So that will be what is populated on this report. And you can run this at month end or quarter end. And like I said, make any adjustments to your balance sheet inventory amounts. Or if you keep it really simple and you just expense all of your parts as you buy them, that won't be necessary, but this still is a valuable report just to see what you've got on hand. Like most reports, they are interactive, so I can double click on a part here and I can get more specifics about that particular part. And if you have any more accounting questions, I'd be happy to discuss those with you. I know, like I said before, everyone's different in terms of how they go about it. Like we do have a few customers that are using the COGS and the inventory. It's really accounting system specific and a few other factors that play into that. But the takeaway from today is if you're expecting those two accounts to do anything, they don't. So, and if you never plan on using inventory or cost of goods sold from a GL perspective in NexGen, you can also hide those fields just to avoid confusion. All right, Taylor, do we have any more questions come in?
No, I think we're looking pretty good.
Okay. Just kind of going through my list here. Went over the reorder points. I did want to, let me hop over to the other side. So if you do resell parts, I just wanted to illustrate how that works. If it's a real quick one-time thing where you may not do it often, you can always create a parts invoice. So I will put in customer here. Add a part. Same part we've been looking at this whole time. It shows you your quantity on hand, so it gives you a nice reference on the invoice itself. So if I'm selling 15 of these, that might be a problem because I've only got 14 on hand. So just be mindful of that. And you could also indicate which location and whether it's new or used. So that's a pretty straightforward way of selling the parts. Some of you may do order entry. And for those of you that may just be confused by what that means, when you look at our menu, order entry is when you are taking orders from one of your customers. It's not an external order to a vendor. So just don't confuse the order entry with the purchase orders. And if you're interested in learning more about order entry, this is where they'll place the order, you can ship it. It ends up with not a parts invoice, but a invoice from orders. So you just reference that order. It has the same exact impact on your inventory. It's just a little bit different channel where you've got an official order for it. You're not just creating an invoice, almost like a PO and a receiver versus going straight to a voucher, but on the revenue side. All right.
Kyle, I did have one more question come in. Let me bring that to the forefront here. Can you print a unit parts list by activity?
Can you print a units parts list by activity? Hold on here. Per unit. I don't know if you can print, hold on, by activity. Let me play around here. Ports, activities, activity by unit. Does this have the, let's see if this has, I don't think this does have parts. No, this one doesn't have parts on it. That's a good question.
Yeah.
You may be able to.
Yeah, if I was to jump in there, what my recommendation would be is you can if the user has access to the maintain unit screen within Atom, that can be an easy way for them to carry it around, because you can see the parts on that on the parts tab. Since the maintain unit screen is very similar in Atom compared to what it is in NexGen, that may be a helpful solution. But yeah, to my knowledge as well, I think the closest you would get would be under materials and the history for a unit, just to see what's been used previously. But that I can't think of anything else at this time. So it's great feedback though.
Yeah, good question. I can't think of anything that would show it in that exact way.
It may be a good idea to check activity summary as well.
Under the materials?
Yeah, it was right where you were there. Yep.
Oh, this might do it. Let's see what the AT09. Well, the problem is this is date specific, so I think it's just going to give you, I don't think it's got parts on it. No, that's not going to do it. If I come up with anything on that one, I'll let you know. See if I got any. Materials activity summary. Oh, no, that's what we just checked. Yeah, good question. I got nothing for you on that one.
And we can follow up. Please, as we mentioned yesterday and in a lot of the sessions, please reach out to support if you'd like any additional kind of follow up.
Yeah, the best, and Taylor alluded to this, if you go into, so if you've got like the 300 service lower, and you create a work order for that on Atom, or you send it to My Work Orders or one of your mechanics, when they go to their suggested part list, it's going to pull in every part that applies to this activity, and they can run it that way or see it that way.
Okay. I had another good question come in. Is there a report that will show me all of the parts transfers done in a particular time frame?
Particular time frame.
I would say the inventory adjustments report. That's
there we go.
Where you can see the adjusted counts. Yeah.
There you go. Thanks, Taylor. Yep. So you can see I've got all the different transactions we had here. So this also shows your cost adjustments as well, looks like. Yeah, so just to show that again, that's under reports, inventory, and then inventory adjustments on that one.
Okay, and then had, I believe, one more come in. I guess, do we have any recommendations, any advantages and disadvantages of using a unique part number versus a manufacturing part number as the company part number, pivot number? Any kind of confusion that we kind of foresee there?
I mean, you can certainly go that route. Our recommendation is just for to keep it simple, and that's a universal part number that everyone would recognize, where it may not mean something to your vendor. But if you use your own part numbers, that's certainly something we've seen our customers do. It's certainly your prerogative, and if you've got a system that works, go for it. That's just if someone asks us, that would be our recommendation. But
I would probably recommend whatever is going to be easiest for and uniform for any user to be able to search a part or look up a part. What's going to be where their mind goes first within your internal organization. So yeah, to Kyle's point, whatever is easiest and whatever is going to make sense. And Kyle, I believe that's the last I can see in our queue here.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for, again, taking the time today. We got another session starting here, not too long, so we'll give you a little bit longer of a break here. Any questions, like I said, please reach out to me or your CSM, and we'd be happy to help you get going with inventory. Hope this is helpful. Matt, do you want to wrap us up here?
Yes, Kyle. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kyle, and thanks, Taylor, for that session. I hope our people that joined us found some benefit in that. And like they said before, reach out to support@fleetcostcare.com or your CSM to take further action on any other additional questions you have or anything else related to parts and inventory. As Kyle said, our next session is greatest hits of reporting, and that's coming at you at 1:15 Central Time. So it looks like we got about a 45-minute break here, so grab a bite to eat, attend to some emails, and we'll see you back online here in about 45 minutes. Thanks, everybody.